Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show today. I'm really glad everybody could join us. So today we're diving into a topic we've never talked about before, but it's really relative to all of us entrepreneurs because this is kind of the new wave of really getting messages out to our clients, to our prospective customers. So today we're diving in. We're going to talk about exactly what you need to know on how to develop an app for your business. And so to talk about this, I brought in one of the most foremost expert, Tim Bornholdt. Now, Tim is an entrepreneur, software developer, videographer, and the founder of the Jed Mahonis Group, where he specializes in helping businesses to strategize, design, develop, and deploy custom iOS and Android mobile application systems that bring their products and services right to their customers' front door. Now, past applications include the Great Clips app, which, by the way, I use all the time, which allows salon customers to check into a salon, walk in, and sit down. Kwikly, a platform that lets dental offices find and hire qualified dentists, hygienists, and assistants, and Greenmill, which allows customers of the legendary Minnesota pizza chain to browse menu and place orders for delivery, amongst other things. Now, while he founded the Jed Mahonis Group immediately after graduating college in 2010, Tim is also a videographer who has seen his work featured on Fox Business News Channel, CNBC, and Bloomberg International, and a podcaster with Olympian Carrie Tollefson on her C Tolle Run podcast in his own show, Constant Variable. So, Tim, welcome, man. Thanks for coming to the show today.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you, Ty.
Hopefully I did not slaughter and mispronounce anything in that.
Well, I was just going to say, when you mentioned that you got your hair cut all the time using the Great Clips app, I think I need to go get mine done as well pretty soon. So, yeah, I'll make good use of that technology.
It's funny, when I was in the military, I was like a rebel, so I had it as long as I could. I'd have to measure it, and then ever since I've been in the military, I have like a military haircut. I can't deal with my hair being long. So I'm at Great Clips every 2 weeks. I use your app to schedule every single time because it saves me a ton of time.
That's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that.
So you've done this for some pretty big players. So let's dive in right exactly into the beginning. I mean, when we think about an app, what does an app really do? What can an app really do for a business? And what does an app in general do? Give us kind of a background to this.
Yeah. So, the app space is still pretty young. We're talking 10 years old, 11 years old. It's really just another tool. That's what I like to equate it as, is an app is just a tool that you can use for your business. You use all kinds of tools to further your processes. I mean, a lot of people use, QuickBooks or Google Sheets, or they have websites, they use social media. An app is just another way to provide whatever service you're providing for your customers in a more efficient way and meet them right where they are. Or it's a great way for your employees if you have processes that you want to automate or standardize across your entire company. Apps are a great way to make that process hard-coded and then expand out to save you money and time through your business.
Do you find that there are different categories or types of apps? Like, for example, Great Clips is obviously a scheduler, right? So, or something along that line. Are there different formats or types of apps a business can create?
Yeah, I mean, we've built a ton of apps for a ton of different people. There's ones that we really like to specialize in are what we would call the on-demand type of apps. So if you think of the Uber for X, you hear that a lot. That's exactly, you mentioned Kwikly. That's exactly what that does, is it helps pair up people that want to work in a dental office and pair them up with offices who need that work. And you can apply that to anything. Like Greenmill is an on-demand app at its core as well, because you're wanting to pair up pizza with people who want to eat that pizza right now. So that's one type of app you can build. Another common type of app that we build would be estimators. So if you work in a space that you have to do complex estimating and you can kind of boil it down into some repeatable processes, we're really good at being able to take a form that might take you a long time to fill out and boil it down into, put in a couple of variables, hit go, and it generates a PDF, and you can send that off to your customer. So yeah, there's lots of different kinds of apps that you can build for both benefiting your customers and for benefiting your business.
What are some of the things that an app can actually do functionality-wise, where some people, because you said some things about streamlining processes, and most people don't think of that, right? We think of an app as a way to get prospects in the door, maybe make their client experience a little bit better. But what are some things functionality-wise that apps can do to help a general entrepreneur?
So going back to my example about like building an estimating tool. So that's just one example of a process that you might be doing in your business all the time. For my sake, I work with clients, and a lot of my job now is building estimates to say, estimating out an app can take anywhere from 3 months to a year to build all the way. So that's a really long time, and there's a lot of moving parts. So I've built tools for myself to be able to go in and say, okay, well, every app has, sign in. Every app has take a picture with the camera, like those types of things. So I have systems now where I can just click a few boxes and get me, 80% of the way there with generating an estimate. Same thing goes, like we've worked with a company that they lease medical equipment. And so what you can do, what they've done is you can put in the purchase price of the equipment and then run it through 3 different types of scenarios for the customer to choose which type of financing makes the most sense for them. So there's all kinds of different ways. And if you think of all the different processes that you repeat over and over and over again that just kind of take time and they're not really letting you do what you actually need to do as a business, those are the types of things that are ripe for building apps and using technology to automate that process.
Okay. And that's a great way to look at it, is when we look at the kind of things that apps can be used for, what you're saying is think about the mundane things that you're doing over and over and over, and you're basically using an app as a system to help you automate that per se and not have to do those things over and over again.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to come down to engaging me to build you a totally custom app. Like I said, you can find Google Sheets. You can do there's all kinds of apps and tools out there that can help you get going down that path of automation. And it is, once you get bit by the bug of finding ways to speed up your processes and automate everything, it just kind of cycles and you get really addicted to saving time and money by using technology as a tool to help you grow your business.
And when we talk about automation a lot and the importance of automation, when we talk about this in the form of an app, how do you even mentally start thinking about this? Like, how do you go, okay, look, like, for example, we've thought about getting an app. We just can't figure out like what we would use the app for. And I think a lot of business owners are that way. We understand the value of an app, but then we look at it and we're like, I don't know exactly what I could do in my business that's relative to this. And I get what you're saying, streamline processes and things, but how does somebody start a mental exercise possibly of figuring out what really an app can do for them in their business?
Well, I think it really comes down to, again, understanding your processes. That's one of the when you're talking about building software, computers are really dumb. I always like to say that it's one of mankind's greatest inventions. Somebody said this, that being able to trick a rock into thinking. That's exactly what a computer is just making a computer smart enough to follow whatever you tell it to do. So if you don't know what your processes are and you don't know what kinds of things that if you don't know how your business runs, that's square one. Just figure out what kind of processes you do to get leads, to close deals, to get a customer in the door and out the door as fast as possible. But once you have those processes, then it's starting really small and finding what's one area that you're constantly stuck in this spinning gear mode and you don't know. Like I said, for me, the biggest thing was generating estimates. It used to take me a week of sitting through and thinking, how many hours is this feature going to take? How many hours is this going to take? And coming up with a number at the end. Where now, once I sat down and said, okay, this feature is going to take this many hours, and you really spell it out in a really dumb way that anyone can repeat. As soon as you have the process down to that point, that's when you can really throw in an app on top of it. It could be an app, it could be a website, it could be, again, a Google Sheet or whatever. But really finding those ways to break down the processes into simple steps and repeating them, that's all that we would do. And then an app is just the mechanism for letting you perform that task.
Sure. So it makes a lot of sense to streamline process. And I guess another way to look at it is what can it do to really improve the customer experience? Because when I think about Great Clips, I think about that's what happened, right? Is it makes it super convenient for me to schedule without going on their website, literally I get it done in seconds. So it really makes it more convenient. And to be honest with you, I haven't thought about it till this moment in time. It's pretty tough for me to go somewhere else now because they've just made it super convenient, right? Like within seconds, I pull it up. I know what my wait time is. And I know when I roll in there, like I'm usually less than 3, 4, 5 minutes, and then I'm being seen. So they streamlined the scheduling process. And because they made it so convenient for me, like they kind of got my business. I'm not going to go anywhere else because of that. Same thing, I guess, with pizza delivery, right? So when it comes to a menu that streamlines and makes it easy for me to go in and get the pizza that I want fast, I guess it really improves my customer experience. And I had the same thing the other day, right? We always order from the same pizza place. My wife was kind of out of it, and I needed to handle the ordering. I couldn't even think about going somewhere else because they already know our order, right? It was just like super convenient. So I
Yeah.
guess this convenience and streamlining the customer process helps probably gain loyalty. What are some of your thoughts along that mindset?
Absolutely. I always like to say that there's a stat out there that says that people only use a handful of apps in any given day. They use 9 to 12 apps, and this would be things like your phone and text messaging and the internet. So there's really, in terms of apps specifically, there's very few people actually go out and install apps. So if you're going to think about building an app for your business, providing value is of tantamount importance. So I would say focusing on the customer experience and thinking about things like that. That's really what it all comes down to for having a successful app.
Makes sense. And I can think about it in a lot of ways, especially on the prospecting and client side, where we do a lot of education. A lot of the entrepreneurs that listen to the show do the same thing. We provide value, and that is actually how the business structure is built. So I could see using it as a prospecting tools to put videos and tools and resources people could access, even as a client tool to make it more convenient to access everything they need, from contact information from the company to do all these different types of things. Do you think that there are certain industries that are kind of ripe and that are better fit for an app than others? Or do you just find with your experience that it works pretty well across all industries if you know what you want it to do?
Because I would say it does apply to all industries, but it depends on where your value lies. Like you said, the professional services space is certainly a fantastic area for us because usually, again, you're prospecting, you're doing a lot of estimating, things like that. Apps are perfect for doing things like that. But again, Great Clips, their core market isn't apps. Their core market is providing haircuts.
Right.
But the app is a mechanism to get people in the door and to get them hooked because the app is so fast and efficient for getting people to use it. So it really can be applied as long as you apply it in the right way. And again, you want to make sure that you're providing that value to the customer to make them actually want to come back and use your app, because it can backfire too. If you have an app that's complex and doesn't really provide a whole lot of value, you don't want to waste people's time. So make sure, if you're looking to use an app to help better your business, make sure you actually know the right ways to extract customer or to provide customer value.
Sure. And then when you talk about the processes converted into an app, the very first step, as you mentioned, is to think about what your processes are. But if we don't understand how that could be converted into an app, how does it come in to communicate with you as the developer? Do we come to you and say, look, here's what we're thinking. We'd like an app to generally do this. Here's the processes we're trying to streamline. What kind of information do we need to convey to you so you could better give us the guidance of what we need to do to create that app?
Yeah, a big part of my job is strategy, which is what exactly that is. You come to me, you have some back of the napkin drawings of, I think the app would be cool if it did X, Y, and Z. And then I can come and say, why doesn't it do A, B, and C as well? Because we're already in here. What other things? So it's my job to tease out of you. You might come to me thinking you want to build A, and I can help you build A, B, and C. So that is a huge part of it. And bottom line, app development is expensive, and building custom software is not cheap. So I want to make sure we get it as right as we possibly can the first time around. And that's a lot of what the strategy does. Is it helps us avoid going down the rabbit hole of we built out X thinking that's what you wanted, but really once you get into the nitty gritty, you realized, it can also do, it should have done, Y instead. So that's a big part of my job up front, is working with people to figure out what exactly they want, and then what kind of tools are available to deliver that expectation.
Now, you talked about a cost, and I'll jump into that a little bit later because I do want to talk about what makes it more expensive and not, and those type of things. But it sounds like when you're first getting started, the very first thing you want to try to do is think about what you generally might use the app for. Look at your processes, figure out what are you going to use it for prospecting, you're going to use it for client management, you're going to use it internally for hiring, what are you going to use it for? Get a general idea of that and map it out. And then what's the next step, you think, to get with the developer to actually start talking about it, to figure out budget, to figure out cost. Can you set a budget? I mean, is that kind of the next stage, is you get with the developer to figure out what's involved in, how much it may cost? What's kind of the steps somebody should take to go through this process of development?
So yeah, if you're coming to me, we would have all of the tools you would need in-house to do all this. But if you're kind of striking out on your own and trying to piecemeal it together, the next step after having that strategy down of what you want to build, I would recommend the next step being to get with a designer, because really pushing pixels around in Photoshop is a lot easier than hard coding something and having it actually built as an app. It's a lot easier to change a picture in Photoshop is what I'm getting at. So the next step for our side is to build kind of what we call a clickable prototype. So we would go through and map out, here's what you're looking for generally. Does this feel right? Because it's amazing the ideas you have in your head. As soon as you translate them onto an actual app, you learn real quickly, oh, this should actually be moved over here, or it'd be a lot more efficient to do it this way and that way. And doing it in the design phase is a lot more affordable than doing it after it's already all built out. So the next step really is get with the designer, and then hopefully when you're with your designer understands good user interface guidelines. There's all kinds of things Apple and Google puts out for here's what good mobile apps look like. But then also partnering with the developer at that time as well, because sometimes if you have a designer who's never done app development design before, they might not realize that if you do something like this, it's going to be 10 times harder than if you tweak it just a little bit and do it like that. So going to a designer that actually understands development is crucial, and then getting with a developer in that stage as well to go over those designs and make sure there's nothing crazy complex about them is also really important to do at that point.
So you think it's better to get a designer before you meet with the app developer, or do you think it's better to get with the app developer because the app developer might work hand in hand with a designer?
Ideally, they would be working together. But I always think in terms of being able to present something to a developer where you have that clickable prototype already done, and you can say, "Here's what I want you to build," like make it actually real. That really comes in handy with having something written out before delivering it to the developer. So I think having the design stuff done, and all of this stuff, all of app development, it's an ongoing process. So it's never like, it's like you buy a house and it's done. You buy a house,
yeah,
and the water heater goes out and you got to fix, everything to do with it. So it's the same thing here. It's an ever evolving process. And so ideally you find a developer and a designer that work really well together and can work hand in hand to make sure that your app is exactly the way you want it.
And I really think that's brilliant advice. And this isn't just even applicable to apps. It's applicable to any kind of software. Being a software company, we have developers and we have designers, and developers, no offense to you or anybody that develops, suck at design really bad.
I'm
right?
not offended.
It's so like if we rely on our developers to come up with design, it's typically like this. I'm like, what? Why would you even do that? And so it makes a lot of sense to go to a designer, get it to look the way you want it to, then go to the actual developer and say, can you build this thing? So that makes a lot of sense. Then
it's really a big, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's really a meshing of, there's the analytical side of your brain and the artistic side of your brain. And that's really the beautiful thing about app development is it is an art form in a sense. Cause if I'm left to my own devices and I code something out that makes logical sense, it might not, invoke a certain feeling in your customer, or it might not provide the value in the right way to your customer or to your employees. So having those two elements working hand in hand is crucial.
When it comes to finding the right developer, what's the process? I mean, you guys aren't exactly marketers that are out there promoting yourselves all over the place. So like, how do you find the right app developer? Because I get these crazy people from India that like email me all the time and they're like, develop my app. I think is what they're saying. I can't really understand the email, but it sounds everybody's approaching me that doesn't seem to be really reputable to try to do this. So how do you go to find the right developer, and what do you look for to make sure and ask questions to ask to know you're dealing with the right developer when you find them?
I think it kind of comes down to, again, like if you're looking find somebody that's going to work on your house. How do you do that? You probably would hit Google. You'd read through some reviews. You'd probably ask your network. You'd probably go through and get referrals from somebody that's worked with a reputable firm in the past. It's the exact same thing with finding a reputable software developer. There's a lot of good freelancers out there. it really, you can go out and go to networking events. You can go to all sorts of areas to find nerds like us. But the important part really is finding somebody that has clients in the past that you can look at their apps, you can download them, play with them, make sure that you get what you're going to be paying for. It also kind of depends on what stage of life you're in, and if you're trying to build an app, for example, if you're trying to build a business that's around an app, like think you're trying to build Uber, so you need, technology is the core component to that. And you're trying to find someone to partner with, you want to make sure that you can find somebody that not only can handle all of the front end stuff of how the app actually looks and feels, but also someone who can do all the back end stuff, all the databases and credit card processing and all that fun stuff that nobody likes to deal with. It's tough to find partners like that. So really, again, it just comes down to networking and asking people in your network to get a referral.
Makes sense. What about the designer, creator? If somebody doesn't have a designer or a graphics person, the type person they work with, should they go specifically looking for somebody that has app design experience, or can any designer get them what they need?
I would say any designer that actually can read, then Apple puts out these guidelines, Google puts out these guidelines. If you find a designer that, again, design is so subjective, and you need to find somebody that has a style that you can mesh with. So one thing that I commonly do is if I find an app that's really well designed and looks beautiful, I Google and figure out who made that app, and I figure out who designed that app, and I get in touch with them. You can do the same thing. Find apps that you really look up to and figure out who designed them and ask them for advice. But if you have, a designer who does all of your ads or does different aspects of design, as long as they can understand the core tenements of app design, I think people can pick it up. But again, finding somebody who's been doing it for a long time, that's going to put you further along than if you kind of have to wait for someone to get more acclimated to the nuances of app design.
So it sounds like for both the design and for the development, looking at previous designs, looking at other apps they've created or been part of really is a pretty big deal to give you the best idea of, is the outcome that you've already seen, that they've already done, kind of in line or congruent with the outcome you're trying to get.
Exactly. Yeah. If they've done it before, they should be able to do it again. So you don't want to go and find, I can't say don't take a chance on somebody, because somebody obviously took a chance on us at some point.
Right.
So you don't want to eschew anybody that hasn't done it before, but just be comfortable and know what you're getting into. If you're looking for, I need to make sure this thing is business critical and it has to work for me, then you maybe shouldn't hire a junior in college or something like that. But if you're looking to build a tool just to get your feet wet and kind of figure out all this app development stuff, maybe then you do go find somebody who's less experienced. It's all relative to your own situation.
Sure. Now, you mentioned earlier, 3 months, 6 months to a year. How long does it take to build an app? Obviously varies depending on the complexity of the app, but on average, what kind of time frame can someone really expect?
Again, it is super relative, and that's the biggest cop-out answer in software. It's really hard to nail down how long a project is going to take to build. Typically, though, I say for an average sized app, you're probably looking at a month to 2 months of design, which is you get a design back, you give feedback, get it back, all that kind of stuff. So 2 months to get your design solid, and then usually it's 2 to 3 months to be able to get to that beta phase where you're able to actually use it and give feedback. And then to be able to release it to the public, you usually want a month or two to be able to have people test it out and everything to make sure that you're not putting out something that's buggy or crashes or doesn't actually fulfill a need. So all told, 6 to 8 months is usually a fair timeline for a relatively complex app.
So what I'm hearing is that if you already have an idea what you want this app to do, problems it wants to solve, these type of things, and you go to a designer and you have the general mock-up done of what it looks like, maybe even a clickable mock-up version of it, and then you go to the developer, you're going to cut yourself months of time and possibly get this done in 4, 6 months, maybe sooner, if you've already done all that legwork before you bring the actual developer into the picture.
Absolutely. Yeah. The more that you've gone through and thought through what your app can do and function and how it works, the less that then you kind of have to have the developer pull that out of you. So getting it on paper is crucial.
So what do you think are some of the most expensive aspects of apps? Like what features have you found that are like at a big amount to the price tag versus features that maybe don't?
The three big things that I've found that add cost on is anytime you want to add a social network component where you have profiles and people can comment on pictures and uploading things like that, that'll pretty much double whatever your budget is right there because there's so many areas around all of that. So I just put social networking in its own box of complexity. The next area is search. Search is actually really, really tough to do depending on what you're searching for. Basic things like being able to search for names or like, that kind of stuff is easy, but having to deal with misspellings, having to deal with specific areas within, if you're searching for cars, if I type in, Ford, should it bring up all the Ford Fusions or should it bring up, there's so many complexities around search. So that depending on how complex you want your search to be, that's one area that's expensive. And then the third area is syncing data. It's kind of expected in 2018 that if I drop my phone in the water and it just destroys it, that I should be able to get a new phone, sign into my apps that I was using before and have all that data right back in there. But that's pretty complex to pull off. There's all kinds of issues with making sure if you change the data over on this phone, what happens on this phone and what happens when you get offline. So data synchronization is also one area that is surprisingly complex and therefore expensive to build out.
And that is surprising to me because I just always thought it was like magic, right? Like what happens on my app automatically gets stored in some other place. So like it's kind of interesting and surprising to me that that's not the case, that what happens on my app stays on my device and then it takes a whole amount of additional expense for that to follow me from multiple devices. Or if something happens to my phone for it to back up in a way where I could say that is surprising to me.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like the case that I kind of use to explain is, if we're building, let's say we're building a reminders app and you have like your grocery list that you're sharing with your wife and you put that you want to get Swiss cheese on there and you leave the house and you put your phone into airplane mode. And then your wife looks at the list while you're driving to the grocery store and says, no, we need cheddar cheese. So she changes Swiss to cheddar. Then you go to the grocery store, you turn your phone on, and then all of a sudden that cheese has been named two different things. What do you do in that case? Are you supposed to get Swiss cheese or are you supposed to get cheddar cheese? That's a really basic example, but there's so many complexities around that we have to deal with. And again, on your end, it looks like magic. And on my end, it looks like a lot of work.
Yeah, that's exactly why I do not go to the grocery store.
Exactly.
So the 3 S's we got to avoid: search, social, syncing. If those
nice, there you go.
Yeah, see that? Search, social, syncing. So if we avoid those 3, then we can at least, keep our costs down. Not to say those 3 can't be done, just expect that any of those 3 can significantly increase the investment to get the app done.
Exactly. And all this stuff, you can always add things on later. That's the beautiful thing about app development is it's never done. So if you want to get something really basic and simple out the door, that doesn't mean that you're never going to be able to add any of those 3 S's on later on.
Okay. Well, how do we get an idea of cost going in, right? Because Uber, not cheap. The pizza place may be cheaper than Uber. So obviously can't even ask you how much because, there's a wild difference between Uber and the pizza place, right? So like, how do you get a general idea of how much this may even cost? Because you don't want to go in and think of what it's going to do and design and all this and then go like, whoa, this is way more than I thought it was, or it's way less. I should have done a lot more with it. Is there some rule of thumb people can follow to get an idea of what this investment will be?
Yeah, there's, like you said, it's kind of like asking me how much does an app cost is asking me how much does a house cost. Because you can get a house in, downtown Minneapolis that's run down and beat up for $1 million, or you can get a house that's in the middle of nowhere that's a mansion for $1 million. So it's really all relative to what kind of app and what kind of services you want to provide through it. Generally speaking, the more features and the more complex, obviously, the more expensive it's going to be to build out. rough pricing on things, right now in 2018, I'd say if you're looking to build, a lot of people don't also consider that building an iOS app and building an Android app, it's two separate apps, it's two separate costs. It's usually the exact same cost, but it's not like you get, for one price, you get both iOS and Android. There's two different disciplines. There's a whole lot of things to look around. So if you're looking at building, like, let's say, let's take a pizza place example. If you're looking to build a pizza app, you got to think that app has like a menu, and it has ordering, and it has being able to create an account to save everything. Something like that. The front end of those apps is probably like 15 to 20 grand per platform. And then all the back end to handle all of that, the credit card processing, the being able to update the menu, because inevitably you're going to want to add more pizza menu items. Something like that, you're probably looking probably between like 40 and 60 grand for something like that. So all told, a pizza app is probably going to be somewhere in the high 5 figures, low 6 figures to build out. And then again, if you're building like something as basic as like that calculator example I gave before, where you put in a couple of numbers and then it runs through a formula and spits out a PDF, that might be something like 5 grand per platform. So you kind of have a wide swath there to play with.
Right. And I think you hit on some really good points, which is what I said at the beginning. I don't want you to try to even give it how much it's going to cost, because there's so many variables. But what you said made a lot of sense. Limit the variables. More features, when you talk about a pizza app that's $50,000 to $100,000, because you need to order, you need to accept credit cards, you got to store that data securely, right? Just the fact of taking credit cards adds a major expense to that. Then you have a menu that has to be variable, that has to be changeable. Then you have to. So as you start tacking on these functionalities, it really, really, really drives up the price. So try to figure out what do you want this thing to do, and try to, at its basic form, come in and get it to do what you want it to do with as little of these extra add-on bells and whistle features. Avoiding the 3 S's is where you start. And then, like you said, maybe you get in the door at 5 grand, maybe you get in the door at 10 grand. Then from there, you can then expand out, add the features as the app starts paying for itself and make your money on it, which that sounds like it makes sense, right?
Yeah, nailed it. That's exactly right.
Okay, so then let's talk about that. I mean, I consider things like this to be an investment, not a cost, because you're not going to do it if it's not going to make you money as a business. Right. That's dumb. So, what are some things? How can you get this app to pay for itself that you found?
A lot of it comes down to, again, if you're talking about an app that you're using for your own employees, labor. Like, that's everyone's biggest expense is how much time are people doing pointless menial tasks that you have to do, but it wastes everyone's time. If you build out an app that lets people fill out whatever forms they need to fill out, and let them get in and out the door as fast as possible, that frees up your labor. You can let them do other things that are actually generating revenue for you. And then on the customer side, I mean, look no further than Great Clips. I have no idea how much money they make through the app, but I can't imagine it's only a couple $100. They probably are doing a ton of money because people continually use the app to get back into the stores. So you can kind of justify the expense once you realize exactly how much volume you're turning through your app.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. And if you think of what we talked about today, right? A lot of these that are using it for revenue generators to make it easier for their customer to engage and sell more, right? I imagine Great Clips has to sell a lot more haircuts because they've made it so convenient for their people to schedule, right? The pizza place has to sell more pizza because they made it super convenient for somebody to order or just pull up their previous order, right? Because my kids always get like cheese pizza. It's all they get. So it's easy for me to pull up that previous order and do that. So the idea here is that the simplicity of experience for the customer even makes it easier and sells more of the product to pay for itself. And like you said, what else are your expenses? If you're doing something to streamline processes that save you tons of time and staffing, then what is that cost if you weren't saving that time and staffing? So looking at those things when you're thinking of this, what's this thing going to do? What's its primary function? How am I going to get my return? Is it going to save me time? Is it going to save me staffing? Is it going to help me make more sales? And then trying to even come up with some math about that investment is a good way to look at it, because then it's not a $5,000 cost. You're investing $5,000 to make hundreds when you think of it like that.
Exactly.
What about, is it still really possible to be profitable with apps? Because this has been going on 10 years, right? So the hype's all died down. It's not something new. So is it really still profitable? I mean, are you starting to see people slow down and not want anything to do with apps? Or are people still really seeing the value where they're getting the return on investment, where they're still really eager to get in and build these apps?
Well, the gold rush is over. It's not as simple. When the App Store first came out and there were 200 apps on the App Store, it was pretty easy to look at every single app and download it and try it out and play with it. Now there's like 1.5 million on each platform. So there's no way that if you build a calculator, that you're going to be the top calculator on the App Store. So an app, again, like I said before, an app is just a tool that you can use in your business if it's necessary. Like, I don't need to buy an auger. There's no reason why my company would buy an auger. That's a tool that I have no use for. You might not find a use for an app with your business, and you might not be able to justify that expense, and that's just fine. But the people that do see the value, whether it's through saving money for your business, or whether you actually have customers that are telling you need an app for this because I use my phone for everything and it makes sense to have an app for this. Those are the ones that are profitable. And one other thing to touch on really quick with that is a lot of people think I'm going to put an app in the App Store and I'm going to put ads on it and I'm going to make millions off of my ads. I'm sure you're familiar with how much the click-through likelihood of an ad is, and you make like fractions of a penny every time an ad is displayed. So the volume of users you need to have in your app to make ads worth it, the likelihood of you getting there is not possible. So if you're going to consider an app for your business, make sure again that you are doing this upfront thought of put pen to paper and see how much money you can save by speeding up your processes, and make sure that you actually can find a legitimate way to make money off of your app, other than just thinking I'm going to put an ad on it and win $1 million.
You mentioned App Store. How do you get the app into the App Store? What other places would you want to get it where you're going to have the best, where it's going to be convenient to download?
Today, the main players is on iOS. The only place you can get apps is the App Store. And then for Google, Google Play is, again, pretty much the only game in town. To get onto those stores, Apple has a $99 a year fee, and Google has a one-time fee of $25. So that's pretty much all you got to do is if somebody can develop the app for you, they can help you deploy it onto the App Store, and they'll have you, to get on the store, you have to provide, images and copy and all the stuff that would show up in your App Store listing. And you'd work with your development team to figure out what all that would look like.
Any thoughts on creating an app when you're in an industry where you're competing with some pretty big players?
Yeah. You shouldn't be afraid of competition. I think Starbucks, there's an interesting phenomenon called the Starbucks effect, where when Starbucks opens up a coffee shop right next to a local small town mom and pop coffee shop, almost every single time, you can never say every single time, but pretty much every single time that they do so, the mom and pop shop experiences huge boosts in customers and volume and everything. And it's because people see the big competition, and then they see the mom and pop shop and they're like, well, why wouldn't, I'm going to get coffee. Why don't I just get the better quality or, whatever. It's the same thing with having a competitor that's bigger than you. That's not necessarily a bad thing. There's advantages to being the big guy, but there's also a lot of disadvantages that you can't be as quick and mobile and all that good stuff. You can use those disadvantages to your advantage if you want to try to tackle a space where there's an entrenched incumbent that's going to be, much bigger than you and much more easy to market and all that stuff. You can find ways to overcome that. You just have to get a little more creative.
Makes sense. Any parting thoughts as we gotta get ready to wrap up?
Again, I think apps can be a very, very valuable tool in your tool chest if you're a business. And if you're interested in getting one, the first step is really take a piece of paper, trace your phone onto that piece of paper, and draw out what you think that app could look like and how it could work. And as soon as you go down this rabbit hole of app development and seeing how much value it can provide for your business, you're just going to keep wanting to add more and more and more onto it. And it's just going to continue to make your business better and better and better.
Awesome. Tim, where can everybody go to learn more, connect with you, and then maybe start the process of having you help them with the development of their app?
Yeah, if you want to head to my company's called the Jed Mahonis Group. You can find us at jedmahonisgroup.com, or it's a little easier if you just go to jmg.mn. And I'm happy to, there's an inquiry form on there. You can just fill it out, and I personally get back to everybody as fast as I possibly can. So that's exactly the form to go to. And I hope if you're interested in an app, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll get back as soon as I can. We'll figure this out together.
Awesome. Tim, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Ty. I really appreciate it.
So everybody listening, make sure you go to jedmahonisgroup.com. I'm going to make sure that this link is right there on our show resources page. That's jedmahonisgroup.com. That's J-E-D, Jed Mahonis, M-A-H-O-N-I-S group.com. Make sure you go there to learn more about developing your own app. Tim walked through literally the entire process from concept all the way through to what you need to know, even to compete with the big boys in that space. And there's a lot of things you could do. I think everybody listening here can think about apps that you're using to engage with companies. And remember, working with people like Tim, he makes it possible for any business to do this. You don't have to be a Great Clips or a Domino's of the world to be able to do this. There's a lot of companies that aren't of that size that are still using apps very effectively to get the return on investment. That's what this is. It's an investment. This isn't something you're going to do just to have. It's something that you're going to do to streamline, to make things more convenient, to save you money, to make you money. And if you do it right, you can come in, put an app out, start making money with it, use the money to then pay for the further development of the app. And again, Tim's mapped through the exact steps to do it. So to learn more, make sure you go to jedmahonisgroup.com. Remember, none of this does anything for you unless you're actually taking action on the information. And as Tim said, just start with the basics. Map out your phone and start drawing out what you'd like this app to do. It's probably one of the best ways to figure out what an app can do for your business. And then you can start thinking about how it can save you money or make you money to then get your return on investment. So make sure you visit jedmahonisgroup.com to learn more. Thanks, everybody. Make sure you have a great day. Thanks.